Chapter 1, Welcome to Synapse Daily. Today, we journey back to 1952. A man envisioned the Red Planet. His name was Wernher von Braun. He was a master of rocketry. He dreamed of a Martian colony. This was not mere science fiction. It was a rigorous technical blueprint. He calculated every single bolt. He weighed every ounce of fuel. The scale was absolutely massive. 10 ships would sail the stars. 70 crew members would lead. This was the first true roadmap. Could humanity survive such a trip? Let us peel back the curtain. The year 1952 changed everything forever. People looked at the moon then. They saw a cold, dead rock. Von Braun looked much further. He saw a second home. He saw red dust in canyons. He saw a future for us. But how could we get there? Computers did not exist yet. He used logic and slide rules. He sat in a quiet office. He drew the path to Mars. His vision was bold and scary. He ignored the skeptics around him. He focused on the math only. Mathematics does not lie to us. It creates a solid foundation. 1952 was the starting point. The mission was almost ready. The engines were ready to roar. Are you ready for the journey? Let us ignite the first stage. Chapter 2, The Architect of Giants. Von Braun was a complex figure. He built the V-2 rocket. Later, he built the Saturn V. His mind lived in the future. He saw Mars as our destiny. In 1952, he published Das Mars Project. It was a mathematical masterpiece. He didn't just imagine a world. He engineered a specific reality. No one had done this before. He used slide rules and logic. He calculated orbits with extreme precision. The world stared in total disbelief. Was he a genius or madman? Perhaps he was a bit of both. He made the impossible feel reachable. He worked for the American dream. He wanted to touch the stars. His past was dark and heavy. His future was bright and red. He studied the laws of physics. Gravity was his only true enemy. He broke the chains of Earth. He designed massive, heavy-lifting rockets. These were the ancestors of Apollo. He spoke with passion and fire. People listened to his every word. He sold a dream to millions. He became the face of space. His hands built the giant machines. His eyes saw the Martian plains. He was the architect of giants. No bridge was too far. No planet was too distant. He led the way forward. The world watched him in awe. Chapter 3, The Ghost Fleet. Imagine 10 massive ships in orbit. They were assembled in Earth's backyard. These were not sleek silver needles. They were rugged, functional space trucks. 3 ships were for cargo only. 7 ships carried the brave pioneers. The total weight was enormous. It required 5.4 million tons of fuel. That is a staggering physical amount. Why did he need 10 ships? Redundancy was the key to survival. If one failed, others remained. It was a true naval expedition. Space was the new, dark ocean. The fleet waited for the signal. Each ship was a small world. They were interconnected by steel cables. They spun to create fake gravity. This protected the crew's fragile bones. The fuel tanks were like skyscrapers. They carried toxic, volatile chemical mixes. One spark would mean total disaster. The assembly took many years. Hundreds of ferry flights were needed. It was the largest construction project. The fleet looked like a city. A city floating in the void. It reflected the bright sun. It was a ghost fleet waiting for the final launch command. 10 ships meant 10 chances. One goal united every single ship. Mars was calling to them. the long voyage was near. Chapter 4, The 70 Pioneers. Who would leave Earth forever? Von Braun planned for 70 people. These were scientists and tough engineers. There were pilots and expert doctors. They lived in cramped, metal spheres. Privacy was a luxury of Earth. Noise was a constant, buzzing companion. Every breath was recycled and filtered. Every drop of water was precious. They trained for years for this. They left their families behind them. What goes through a mind then? Fear and wonder fought for space. They were the first Martian citizens. Their courage remains a haunting legacy. They shared small, narrow bunk beds. They ate in a tiny kitchen. They missed the smell of rain. They missed the blue sky. The stars were their only neighbors. 70 souls in a dark vacuum. They were the elite of humanity. They were brave and very focused. Each person had a vital role. No one was a mere passenger. They practiced for every possible failure. They knew the risks were high. Death was only an inch away. A thin metal wall saved them. They trusted the math of Braun. They trusted each other with life. It was a bond of steel. They were the new explorers. They walked into the unknown. 70 hearts beat as one. Earth was a memory now. Chapter 5, The Long Silent Voyage. The journey took 8 long months. The sun was a distant spark. Earth faded into a blue dot. Silence filled the cold vacuum. The ships rotated for artificial gravity. This kept their bones from breaking. They ate dehydrated, tasteless food blocks. They watched the stars for hours. Radiation was a silent, invisible killer. The lead shielding was quite heavy. Day merged into night without end. Would the engines fire when needed? One mistake meant a frozen grave. The void is a cruel master. Metal walls were their only world. Each ship hummed with electric life. They heard the fans breathe air. They felt the vibration of pumps. Space is not truly empty then. It is full of mechanical ghosts. Every week, they checked the hull. Tiny meteors were a constant threat. A small hole was a disaster. They lived in a delicate bubble. Psychologists watched their mental health closely. Isolation can break the strongest mind. They shared stories of green forests. They dreamed of the ocean's salt. They missed the feeling of wind. But they looked forward to Mars. The red star grew larger daily. It was a beacon of hope. They were halfway to their goal. The void did not break them. They were stronger than the dark. Chapter 6, Arrival at the Red Void. Mars finally loomed in the glass. It was a dusty, ochre ball. It looked dead and very cold. There was no welcoming blue atmosphere. The fleet entered a high orbit. The tension was thick and heavy. They had traveled 35 million miles. Now, the hardest part began. How do you land a giant? The atmosphere is thin and tricky. They prepared the specialized landing gliders. These ships had massive, wide wings. They would soar through Martian winds. The surface waited for their boots. They checked the landing sites twice. The North Pole was the target. It was flat and very icy. They needed a smooth natural runway. The pilots gripped the cold controls. Their hearts hammered in their chests. Gravity began to pull them down. The ships began to heat up. Friction turned the air to fire. They saw the red craters below. The canyons were deep and dark. Dust storms swirled in the distance. This was a hostile, alien world. There was no turning back now. The descent phase had finally started. Computers calculated the final glide path. They were falling toward their destiny. Mars was no longer a dream. It was a hard, rocky reality. Success was the only option left. Chapter 7, The Gliders of Mars. Von Braun designed giant spaceplanes. They had wings like silver birds. They would land on the ice. The North Pole was the target. The ice provided a smooth runway. Imagine the sound of the descent. The thin air shrieked against metal. The pilots fought the heavy controls. Dust kicked up in huge clouds. One glider touched the frozen ground. Then another followed the first path. Humanity had finally arrived on Mars. The red dust settled on boots. A new era had finally begun. The wings were incredibly long and thin. They caught the weak Martian air. The gliders skidded across the ice. Sparks flew from the landing gear. It was a violent, shaking ride. Then, suddenly, there was absolute silence. The engines were finally turned off. The pioneers looked out the windows. They saw a world of white. The ice reflected the tiny sun. They checked the airlocks very carefully. They put on their heavy suits. The first door opened with a hiss. They stepped onto the Martian pole. The ground felt solid and real. It was a victory for science. They were 140 million miles home. Yet, they felt like giants today. The red planet was now theirs. Chapter 8: Building the First City. The base was a metal village. They used the ships as homes. The cargo ships held the supplies. They built inflatable, pressurized habitat domes. Solar power provided the vital energy. They mined the ice for water. Oxygen was scrubbed from the soil. It was a life of chores. They checked seals every single hour. A leak meant certain, quick death. They explored the rocky, red plains. They looked for signs of life. They found only rocks and silence. Yet, they called this place home. They set up the radio towers. Communication with Earth was very slow. A signal took 20 long minutes. There was no real-time help coming. They were truly on their own. They built labs for the soil. They analyzed the red, toxic dust. They searched for water under rocks. Life inside the domes was busy. Everyone had a schedule to follow. They grew lettuce in glass tubes. Fresh food was a rare miracle. They shared a communal dining hall. They watched the Martian sunsets together. The sun looked blue and small. It was a strange, beautiful sight. They were the first Martian architects. They built the foundation for us. The city was small but strong. Chapter 9: The Logistics of Survival. How do 70 people stay alive? Chemistry was their only true god. They grew plants in small tanks. Hydroponics saved their caloric intake. They recycled their own waste daily. It was a closed-loop survival system. Spare parts were worth more than gold. You cannot call for a repair. Tools were 3D printed or forged. Every calorie was carefully logged and tracked. Boredom was a dangerous mental enemy. They played chess and told stories. They lived on the edge of extinction. Fuel production was the main goal. They needed methane for the return. They used the Martian atmosphere for this. It was a complex chemical factory. One mistake would strand them forever. Every battery was a precious resource. They conserved power during the nights. The cold was a constant drain. Their heaters worked without any rest. They wore layers of thermal silk. They monitored the oxygen tanks daily. Every breath was a calculated cost. They were accountants of human life. They survived on grit and math. Science kept the Grim Reaper away. They were masters of their environment. They turned a desert into home. Each day was a quiet triumph. They never stopped working for tomorrow. Chapter 10: Scientific Wonders and Horrors. The scientists studied the ancient craters. They looked for fossils in stone. Was Mars ever a green world? They found evidence of ancient rivers. The weather was a constant threat. Dust storms could last for months. These storms blocked out the sun. The temperature dropped to lethal levels. Their suits were heavy and stiff. Moving was a slow, painful dance. One rip meant a sudden end. They pushed the limits of biology. Each discovery was paid in sweat. The red dust was like ground glass. It got into every single seal. It wore down the metal joints. The explorers faced a silent horror. Static electricity was everywhere on Mars. It caused the equipment to glitch. They lived in a world of ghosts. They found strange, dark basalt glass. Did a volcano roar here once? They mapped the massive Olympus Mons. It was 3 times taller than Everest. They felt small in its shadow. They looked for microbes in the ice. The results were always a mystery. Their mission was to find life. Instead, they found a vast cemetery. It was a beautiful, lonely graveyard. They respected the red desert's power. Mars did not want them there. Yet, they stayed to learn more. Knowledge was worth the terrible risk. Chapter 11: The Return Equation. After 2 years, it was time. The fuel was ready for launch. But not everyone could go back. Some ships were left behind forever. They became permanent, hollow Martian monuments. The return trip was equally long. Their bodies were weak and tired. They missed the smell of rain. They missed the green of grass. The countdown began in the dust. The engines roared into the sky. Mars stayed behind in the dark. Would Earth still feel like home? The ascent was a brutal, heavy climb. Gravity felt like a physical weight. They left the landing gliders behind. Only the sleek ascent stages remained. They docked with the waiting fleet. Many cabins were now very empty. The silence was louder than before. They looked at the red horizon once. It was a bittersweet, final goodbye. The voyage home was a struggle. Their muscles had turned into water. They exercised for hours every day. They dreamed of a simple steak. They dreamed of a blue sky. The stars were now familiar friends. Earth was a tiny sapphire ahead. They checked the navigation tables again. 1 degree off meant missing Earth. They trusted their math to the end. The long journey was almost over. Chapter 12: Why It Never Happened. The 1965 plan was too costly. Vietnam and politics changed the focus. NASA chose the moon instead. The Grand Fleet remained on paper. The blueprints gathered thick, gray dust. We lost the momentum of 1952. The technology was there but dormant. The dream was shelved for decades. People forgot the 10-ship fleet. It became a relic of future past. What if we had actually gone? The world would be very different. We might be multiplanetary by now. The Cold War demanded quick wins. Mars was a long, slow marathon. The budget was cut by the Senate. Engineers cried over the lost designs. Von Braun's office became very quiet. His wooden models were put away. The public wanted the moon first. Mars was deemed too far away. We chose the safer, closer path. A great era of exploration ended. The massive rockets were never built. The 70 pioneers never left Earth. Their names were lost to history. Only the yellowed papers remain today. We look at them with regret. It was a future we rejected. We traded the stars for the Earth. The ghost ships still wait there. They wait in our collective mind. Chapter 13: The Legacy of Von Braun. Wernher von Braun changed our vision. He made Mars a logical goal. His math is still used today. Elon Musk follows his early trail. The red planet still calls us. We stand on a giant's shoulders. The dream of 1952 lives on. One day, the fleet will sail. We will see those 10 ships. Thank you for joining Synapse Daily. Keep looking at the red star. The journey is just beginning now. Our future is among the stars. The project was a bold light. It showed us what is possible. He proved we have the brain. We only need the collective will. His ghost fleet inspires new dreamers. We see his influence in Starship. We see it in every rover. Mars is no longer a god. It is a destination for us. We will build that city soon. We will walk those red plains. The 1952 plan was a seed. That seed is finally starting to grow. We are the children of Braun. We are the new space generation. This has been Synapse Daily. I am your host signing off. Sleep well under the white moon. Dream of the red, dusty plains. The stars are waiting for you.